Welcome to episode 14, Game Retail Ramblings. I'm your host, Travis Severance, coming to you live from Millennium Games Studios in the heart of the largest game store in the Empire State. I hope everybody had a happy May 4th. We were really busy here at the store. Lots of events going on. We did demos in the morning for basically everything that we sell that's an expandable product for Star Wars and anything that's a board game as well. So we had Legion, we had Shatterpoint, we had X-Wing, we had Armada, we had Villainous, we had the Deck Builder. I think that covers everything that was on my list outside of Rebellion, because Rebellion's, like I said, about a 4-hour game and not an easy one to teach. All of that culminated into a 40-player draft at the end of the night as well. A lot of new faces, which was good to see, and the demo tables were busy most of the time. We also had the benefit of hosting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday Christian Peterson and his team at Ghost Galaxy. They are currently the people that run and operate Keyforge. Their campaign for their third set, Ambers of the Sky, just launched and just finished and completed, and I think they were a little over 400K, so congrats to them on that. The retail tiers for those have gotten better and better and better. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at what they're doing on the retail side of things, feel free to jump in there and take a look. There's an entire subset that we get as retailers now that's only available to us. They're not selling it themselves, they're selling it to retail stores, and they're also there's different goals that they have internally. They didn't publish them, but they have thresholds set where if one of your local customers picks you as their Keyforge location, you'll have additional buying opportunities for that set as well, and some awards that come along with it. So definitely take a look at that. They were fantastic. If they reach out to you and want you to host a thing, there was a really good setup for us. They don't bring any product with them for the sealed events outside of the stuff that's exclusive to the Vault Tour themselves. So as a retailer, I was allowed to sell specific Vault Tour packs that are only exclusive at the Vault Tours. And then all the other events that they run outside of one is a sealed event. All the players that were there that attended either had to bring product of their own or they had to buy the product from us. So it was a pretty lucrative weekend for us. Part of the requirement is making sure that you have enough space for 128 chairs, which we have no problem for. Again, for those of you just joining us or not familiar, our space fits about 300. Part of the decision was made on that because I think there's a tier of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon level event that requires 256 to be able to get that tier and host in-store. So that was sort of part of the reason why we decided to go with the size that we did when we moved into the new space. Today, we're going to talk all about events, how I do events, what I've seen for other people doing events, things that have worked for us, things that haven't worked for us, all of that good stuff. One of the things that I want to talk about really quick is I want to do just a really quick disclaimer, and I want everybody to understand when it comes to this show or my activity online, or if you follow me in any of the other spaces, I have better things to do with my time than to come on this show or be in that space and lie to you about what's working for me. There's no benefit to me to try to forge a narrative that isn't true or isn't accurate. There's no internet points. I don't win any prizes for that. It's dollars and cents, profit, and growth. That's what my focus is. There's just no benefit for me to tell you something that is working, that isn't working, where I'm making things up. It's just not. I just have better things to do with this half hour / hour of my day than to come on here and make things up. So if you have a question about something, or you don't believe, or you need some proof, or you want a report, or you want some information on it backed up with some data, I'm here for it. I promise. I will be able to bring that to you, as long as it's not something that's proprietary inside of the business. I'm happy to share I will share my work at any time. So integrity here in this space is super, super important to me. So let's talk about events. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. 2 weeks ago, I was at Level Up Con in Las Vegas. Universus was there. There was some work that I've been doing with them. There were a handful of other smaller card games. PPG was running some events there. It was basically a fighting game / tabletop game show. I had the pleasure of having lunch in Cipriani, which is in the Win, with the people from UVS, Zach from Team Covenant, and the guys from Alpha Clash as well, Ridge and his other partner there. And it was nice. We sat down for lunch and we sat in front of Nicolas Cage and his wife. So that was kind of a cool setting to be in. And the conversation was about events, and we were talking about shows in general and that sort of thing. Before that, I was in line at Earth to get some fantastic coffee, and my friend Gary Ray's author page had an entire post that went up where he was referencing an article an excerpt written by Charlie Munger from Costco. And he was talking specifically about why the decision was made for Costco to charge a membership fee, and wouldn't Costco have made more money if they didn't have a membership fee? And part of the reason why he wanted a membership fee associated with that was, without a doubt, if you don't have a membership fee or you don't have a barrier, you certainly will have more people shopping in your space. There's no question about that. You don't have to do any studies or any research on that. It's obvious. The less barrier to entry, the more people that are going to be in the space. But what he was quick to point out was the membership allows them a certain fee, so there's a certain amount of exclusivity that comes with that, and there's different ways where they can solicit and market to those people in a more targeted way. And the other thing, too, is the studies that they had done before they decided to put that into play show that people that are unwilling to give your driver's license as part of your membership, a lot of your loss and a lot of the maintenance that you have to do as a business is built into that tier of customer or lack thereof, right? So you're going to deal with loss, you're going to deal with theft, you're going to deal with customer service issues, you're going to deal with all kinds of return policy issues and different things like that. And if you put a layer there where your identity has to be attached to that layer, some of that stuff should go down and the quality of your general shopper will go up. So there was a long thread about that, and a bunch of people sort of chimed in and they talked about how their event centers worked and what they were doing in that space. And I obviously put my feedback in as well. I'm on Gary's page a lot. I use it as a pretty good sounding board. It's a nice group of people that are in there. Somebody asked if, when I made the decision to move into the new space, if I had calculated what the costs were for my business to facilitate the space that I was using for organized play. My first gut emotional reaction to it was to just be sarcastic and say, no, 1/3 of the square footage that I have here at the store, I just figured the hell with it. I got to pay rent on that space. Whatever happens in there happens. They can do, free Play-Doh days and go in there and make sandcastles and whatever they want to do. Why would I even put any work towards it? And then I got a little bit annoyed by it. And I was like, of course I measured that space. I took a look at that. I went into deciding how we were going to allocate that space based on the tables and chairs that we would need, how many people we would need in that space, what it was going to take for that to be successful. And part of that is just a list of costs. In fact, while I was in the middle of that, it was at the time where we were managing a whole bunch of events, and events had gotten to the point where we were kicking people out of the space. My old space could fit comfortably 144. We could do 168 if we messed around with some stuff and tightened it up a little bit. But 144 was about where we're at. So when we moved into here, it was intentional to go double because we had gotten to the point where every single night of the week we were kicking people out. We had reached capacity on our space. There were people that wanted to play that couldn't play. Some of the tournaments were filling up. We had this whole entire queue thing that we had to go into and pre-signups, and the whole thing sucked. So it was really intentional when we moved into this space that, we're gonna double that space. And on top of doubling that space, we're actually gonna put somebody in an event kiosk that's gonna manage signups. They're gonna manage a register. They're gonna be in charge of selling the drinks and the snacks and making sure the round clocks are going and making sure that all the people inside had the wristbands to make sure that they paid to use the space. That salary was something that went into those calculations, as well as everything else that goes into that space. So we needed a handful of extra equipment. So I needed double the tables and chairs. We needed some more terrain because we were featuring some of that. So these are a lot of one-time costs. But factored into that as well as heat and AC, maintenance of that room, garbage bags, that kind of thing. So when I calculated that out and I looked at the money and the revenue that we were generating for use of the space that we were in before, and I applied it to that space, I felt confident without us growing a single person, because I couldn't guarantee that moving to this space was going to give me any kind of natural growth. So every calculation that I made based on this move was based on the money that we were making in the existing space. And if I didn't feel comfortable about that, I wasn't going to move into this new space and take this thing on. And it was a decision that both myself and my business partner made. When COVID started to open up a little bit and we were allowed to bring people back into the space, we were limited to the number of people that we could have in the space. And when it came to COVID, we followed the state guidelines every single step of the way, which pissed some people off, and some people it wasn't enough, and some people it was too much. And we just followed what New York State allowed us to do, and that was just the easiest thing for us to say, look, the state says we can do this, this is what we can do. Well, part of that meant that we were limited to the number of people that we could have in the space. So the revenue that was expected to be generated in that space was going to go down because I knew I wasn't going to get as many people in there because I couldn't collect as many event entry fees, and I couldn't have the same size events that I was having before. In fact, some of the publishers weren't even allowing us to run events regardless of what our state could do, Pokemon being one of them. When we came back from COVID, it was decided that we were going to put a $10 minimum purchase attached to use of our game space at the time. And part of that was some napkin math, and part of that was measuring seats and what our average attendance was on a daily basis and the cost of that space and so on and so forth. So when we looked at growing into the new space, we kept that on board. But there were a handful of people that really didn't like the fact that we were requiring a $10 purchase or a $10 entry fee or a $10 credit swap or something like that. We tried to make the program as easy as possible and as easy to understand as possible. So it's just simply this. You have to spend $10 in the store any given day that you're going to be in that event space. I don't care if you buy snacks with that. I don't care if you buy a $40 board game and you invite your 3 friends in with that $40 purchase. All of our events are $10 or more. That's what you need to do in order to be in the space. Or you can just purchase $10 in store credit. $10 in store credit, you can walk back there with a bracelet and you can be in there as long as you want, as long as we have space, as long as there aren't specifically scheduled events that are set up for that space and there's no extra space for open gaming, which doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. So most of the time we can facilitate everything that isn't, a giant Armageddon game of 40K that's going to take 8 tables and it's going to be 4 players and that sort of thing. And that was really, really realistic for us. And there's a Warren Buffett quote that says, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." When we made that decision, we had a really good play space as it was. We had acoustical sound panels. We had butcher block tables that are beautiful walnut finish on them, nice metal chairs that don't break, that have a massive weight capacity to them and are fairly comfortable. We had round clocks. We had events that were starting on time. We gave out prize support that was conducive to the number of players that we had coming in. 50% of every single player that plays in every single one of our events is going to leave with something for their troubles, regardless of how well the rest of the field does. That's where our $10 fee came from. And it was just a calculation to look at most of the stuff in the store we're selling for, let's use just a blended rate and say that let's just assume that everybody buys $10 in store credit and that's how they utilize the space. So it's $450 in revenue generation outside of the cost that we end up having at that point. So I use that to calculate out our rent. Some social media is put into there as well. Social media for our event space is social media for our store as well, because the success of the store is measured by visits. I can't sell anybody anything if I don't have people walking into the store. If I don't give them reasons other than I have boxes on the shelf for them to walk into my store, it's very easy for them to sit on their couch and press go on Amazon and wait a day. Why get out? Why drive? Why deal with the people? So on and so forth. So if I don't have a third space that I'm creating, that I think there's a huge benefit for younger kids, there's definitely a huge benefit for having an after work social space to go, especially when you take a look at some of the statistics on loneliness for young people. Well, where do you go for community? That place used to be church, or it used to be sports and things like that. Well, we are creating another space that allow people to come in there and socialize, be able to get a little bit of competition, a little bit of enjoyment at a really reasonable cost. So when we made that move, the first time we spent about $20K in fixtures and tables and chairs and that sort of thing. So we spent at least that much on the new upgrade and stuff. So part of the quality is that if your space doesn't look like it's worth $10 a visit, then you'll probably run into some resistance when it comes to trying to charge for that kind of stuff. I just used the calculation that I used before on the new space. So if I will break down some costs for you. So let's say that my play space is a third of the space. So a third of my lease has to be paid for out of revenue generated from that space. It's a third of my heat. I've got tables and chairs and maintenance and vacuuming and that sort of cleanup that I have to be assigned to that. I've got an employee that's at an event kiosk. They're there from 4 to 10 Monday through Friday, 10 to 10 Saturday, and 10 to 5 on Sunday. There's judges and dungeon masters as well that we need to have. Not all games need to have them. There's plenty of games that we run over the course of the week that are casual enough where they don't need somebody there judging the event. Our prize support is flattened out. What that means is that it's not top end heavy. There's not a lot of stuff that we're giving out on the prize tier that's worth an argument in the middle of a match and things like that. Most of the time we have some staff member that's playing in the event, or there's somebody close by, whether it's the person at the event kiosk that understands the rules of the game that can make a call. And a lot of times the community polices itself. So casual, non-rated events, we don't spend a ton of money on judges and organizers because it doesn't make sense to be able to do that in something that's just a casual space. If you look at what our pricing is, we factor in prize support, we factor in the cost of the person that's running the room, we factor in the lease space as well as the heat and any other fixed cost that comes in there, and there's a portion of it that goes towards the marketing as well. So if I break this thing down really quickly, here's just a dose of what our average attendance like. So let's just assume that after expenses for costs of product or whatever they end up buying, we're getting $4.50 for each seat that we sell. We averaged 97 people on Monday, 75 people on Tuesday, 86 people on Wednesday, 85 people on Thursday, 105 people on Friday, 80 people on Saturday, and 126 people on Sunday. So if I take that 450 and I multiply it times the average attendance that we have for days of the week, that comes out to be a roughly $3,000. So we're generating roughly $12,000 in that space on a monthly basis, not counting the fifth week and that sort of stuff. So let's pretend that $860 of that money is going towards payroll for the event kiosk person. Let's also pretend that half of that, even though it's not even close to this, is going towards the staff that I have that are running the different events and the organizers and the demo people and that sort of thing. So we're at, $1,720 out of $12,000 that we're generating. If I subtract that and I move my math around and I take a look at my fixed costs and my fixed expenses and I pull everything out, after everything's said and done, at those numbers, on average numbers, it's about $1,500 that the store has in discretionary revenue at the end of the day. I'm not going to call that profit because it gets reinvested and there's all kinds of things, but after all my expenses are paid, it's $1,500. What I'm going to tell you about those numbers are, those are my weekly attendance numbers for my weekly events. The majority of the revenue that's generated in the space comes from special events. None of the special events that we run here are factored into those numbers. That's just what we're generating Monday through Sunday on average attendance for the events that we're hosting every day of the week. So that $1,500 that we're making is actually significantly more than what we are in that space. If you're building all your costs into it and you're taking a look at what your cost is on your products and you're taking a look at what your costs are for the people that are going to facilitate that space and so on and so forth, and you can get consistent attendance that way. And this is based on, we're coming up on a year. So it's about 10 and a half months worth of data points. And it also, oh, by the way, it also doesn't factor in at all the non-player bracelets. So if somebody comes in and they spend $10 or they bought a product or something like that and they're going to use the space, I have the numbers for the people that do that on a daily basis, but I'm not factoring that into any of those numbers in those attendance because there's no way to really measure that. There's no consistency there. Some days are different than others. The other side of it is it's impossible to deny or figure out what the benefit of having somebody in the store is outside of taking a look at things like snack sales, right? So we sell about $10,000 a month in snacks and drinks. Pretty high margin, right? We're probably in the 60s as opposed to 45 there. Some of it's even higher. Water's like 85% margin and different things like that. So there's a whole swath of that money, not all of it, because some people just buy a drink when they're buying their stuff and they're going to leave. But a large part of that comes from the events. And then the other thing is that I have customers coming in consistently, which means that I get better pre-order numbers. I get better sell-through on my stuff when it comes out. My release dates, typically my events are baked in a way where the game is being run on the same day that their general release is, right? So if their release product comes out on a Thursday, we run an event on that Thursday for that game. It just makes sense. They're coming in to pick up their stuff. It's convenient. Everybody's excited about it. We've got single sales and so on and so forth. So visits to the store is super, super important for us. Without visits, you're not going to make sales, or at least we aren't, because we don't have e-commerce up or going or anything like that. So we need people to come in. So we need to give them reasons to come in. Not to say that everything we run is specifically priced. There's a couple of different events that we have there that have no entry fee. Those are tactically put on the calendar. We do a Gundam build day. The first one that we did of those, we didn't have an event fee because A, we didn't know how many people were going to come from the community. B, it was us sort of introducing ourselves to the community and seeing who the builders were and doing some demos on how to build, and some people were helping out with that sort of thing. So we had some basic entry level kits that had a discount attached to them if you happen to be there for that day. But the first one that we advertised a little bit, we had, 40 people that came in and we sold $2,000 in Gundam. The last one we did was 60 people that we had. We priced that one in because we did some raffles and some different stuff. We had more people for the second event and we sold double the amount of Gundam product that day. Pokemon trade days, we usually run one of those every month. Parents come in with 2 or 3 kids sometimes. They're just in the back, they're trading cards, they're learning the game, that sort of stuff. We don't charge for that because a lot of times it's entire families that are coming in, and I'm not going to hit them up for $10 every single one of them. I want them to come in, I want them to discover and explore the store, I want them to have a good time, I want them to trade, do that sort of thing. And when it comes down to events, basically it falls into the 3 R's for me. There are 3 reasons why I'm typically running an event or something's going on the calendar. It's recruitment, it's retention, or it's reward. I'm trying to recruit a group of people for an event, or I'm trying to grow an event, or I'm trying to grow a community. The retention is leagues and continued support for that so that they stay in the space from release to release when it's expandable games, and rewards is when we have things, special opportunities with larger level events that either the publisher puts on in collaboration with us, or we decide to run because we're gonna put the pricing at a little bit higher than what our normal profit would be on that, as just a thank you to the community for doing the thing. Those events aren't typically on the same profit structure as what we run everything else on, which is another reason why I didn't put those into my regular weekly numbers. So that's sort of the long and the short of how we price things, how I come up with my costs, how I attribute the costs into those buckets to make sure that indeed 1/3 of our space that's play space is pulling its weight on those events and different things, because it is a lot to maintain that space. The rent for the square footage in my event space costs me the same as it does in my retail space, the same as it does in my warehouse space, the same as it does in my bathrooms. So if it is not generating some level of revenue, or it's not helping the business in some supportive way, there's no reason to have it. Not everybody can have pay-to-play space. I know there's certain areas where the economics of it doesn't necessarily work, or you've got a ton of competitors out there where it doesn't work. I mean, us charging $10 allowed my competitors to charge $5 and look like heroes to some of the customers. So I'm sure that revenue helped them out at the end of the day as well. So if you have a space that's worth $10 to come into, again, going back to the value thing, then you have more opportunities to be able to do that. But the reality of it is too, there's things that you don't have to deal with when you have pay space that you do if you are allowing for free. For free play space, you're hoping that people are coming in and they're using the space, and then they're generating some revenue. You have to provide them the same level of customer service. You have to provide them with the same amount of cleanup afterwards. You have to deal with whatever else they're doing in your space. They could be in there selling things in the parking lot and all the other things that go along with it. And the reality of it is, we built this giant, big, sexy space for customers. The customers are the ones that allow us to have that space. It's not the people that just come in to hang out and to use it as a social hour. And I can't think of personally an entertainment venue that allows for that many people to be in the space, regardless of whether we had space for 40 or 4, that's just free. I don't know a place to go. Like, I guess I could go to my local library, walk around the park, but there's no entertainment, there's no tournament, there's no demonstrations, there's no play, there's no activity going on in those spaces that you're not doing yourself. So just something to keep in mind when you're looking at the revenue that's generating there. So I'm going to go into 7 ways to make your event space more profitable. Number 7, super simple, is the play space clean and are your bathrooms clean? Because if you have people that are coming in and you're asking them to pay money to play in your play space, whether it's event entry or not, they have a certain expectation for the bathrooms, and they have a certain expectation that the play space will be clean. And they're not getting trampled over by other shoppers because your play space is mixed in the middle of your retail. You don't have it sectioned off. The tables are filthy or disgusting. They don't even want to put a playmat on them because they're so dirty. There's no lighting. It looks like shit. Is it clean and are your bathrooms clean? Those are bare bones things. You can actually apply that to the entire store. Number 6, do your events start on time? And do they finish on time? Now, I will tell you with 100% certainty, the answer to that from my store is not 100%. They don't all start on time. They don't all end in time. There are things that happen. We're juggling 4 or 5 events in a night. The reason is never because there's not somebody watching the event or there's not somebody participating in the event. Typically, it's the system is set up where we're chasing down results at a table or something like that, or somebody ends up going long, or the group of players go long a little bit. We always have somebody that's in that room that's watching that stuff. Occasionally, there's tournament issues. The software that some of these companies have, all of you have dealt with it to some degree, sort of sucks. So occasionally there's times when the tournament will crash and different things like that. So it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but our goal is 100% of the time to start on time and 100% of the time to finish on time. Number 5, do you prize out 50% of your field or more? We prize out at least 50% of our field because we want half the people to come in to leave with something that they didn't have before, so they feel like the investment into the time that they spent on the tournament was worth their run. Yes, we're providing entertainment. Yes, they're getting to play a fun game. We flatten out our prizes specifically. What that does is it makes it so that the space is less competitive and it's more new player friendly. And the only way that we can grow a community is by continuing to have new players activated in that community. So if we flatten the prizes, we make it less top heavy. It's not as exciting for the people that want to come in and shark everybody's binders or sell stuff and do that kind of thing. And that's intentional. We flatten out the prizes because we want more people to win. And we want more people to leave happy. Number 4 is with expandable games or with games that you're going to run on a weekly basis, do you carry singles? Do you carry supplies and accessories for the games in those event space? There's a whole lot of opportunity to sell singles, dice, sleeves, deck boxes, all of those things if you have them there. You take a look at the sales during the night when you have those kind of events, and you have plenty of people that don't care, and then maybe they don't shop for your sealed because your sealed's priced at a point where they don't want to, or they don't want to buy your boxes or whatever, but they will allow you the opportunity to buy their singles. You can sell them singles, and they will buy sleeves eventually. Number 2, allocate space and events based on the revenue generated by the game. Super important. It feels like it should be a no-brainer, but it's not always easy for some people to understand that. When we take a look at our event calendar and slice it up, it's all based on the revenue that a game generates. It can't be any other way, because I need, again, to pay the rent, right? So it's easier for me to decide what games I want to put on the calendar and how many of those nights a week that I want to dedicate staff support, that kind of thing, towards facilitating games based on the revenue that the game generates. So if you take a look at our event calendar, you will see some games are multiple days of the week and some games are not. It's just a calculation of revenue. I've got so many tables, I've got so many chairs, I've got so many days of the week. We slice that up based on the revenue that's generated for each of those games for us. Sometimes we increase, sometimes we decrease. Sometimes that happens based on the player base and the attendance. Occasionally we have games that just buck the trend. We sell lots of that product, but for whatever reason, nobody's coming to the store to play those games. And that's a challenge on ourselves. And the number one easiest way to make more money in your play space is to charge. If you charge money for people to use play space, you're going to make more revenue in that play space. Now there's plenty of people, and I talked to a fairly intelligent retailer / publisher last weekend that had gone through the process of trying to charge for space, and there was just a giant mutiny that occurred, and they tried for 8 months to charge for that space, and it just didn't work. So they backed off, and they decided to go with free play space once again. Now, me personally, without being in the space and looking at the space and understanding it, the system that they talked about for the pay-to-play experience seemed a little bit convoluted and complicated to me. There was like a membership that came with it, and this other thing, and you had a customer account, and you got a coupon when you bought something, and so on and so forth. It's just insanely complex. Like, it's pretty simple. Did you pay $10 today? Here's a bracelet. Go in the back, do whatever you want within the rules of the store. So that's it for today. AMA after the show, as always. Next week, we're going to talk about the 4th longest CCG on the market. That's UVS. They got Attack on Titan set coming out soon. They also have some really cool new demo decks that are coming out. The licenses that they're running right now are fire. They've been spoiling some of the Godzilla stuff from Toho. Awesome stuff. Their Challenger deck series for Critical Role has been great. So we'll take a trip through kind of the messy history. I've got a bunch of locals in my area that have won a whole bunch of different cards and stuff. So we'll talk about that next week. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and have a great rest of your day.